So we're going to go over the notes for what we covered on April 22nd during the Zoom meeting. I'm sorry that the sound wasn't working before, but I think I've got it now. All right, so we talked about what was called the graphing form of an equation, and we're going to start with just looking at parabolas. In there, it's going to involve using an a, h, and k in the equation to transform it from a basic equation, or what's called the parent function, to any other function of that same type. So if I go here, so this is the parent function of a parabola. It's y equals x squared. It's just a basic one. And when I put different things in front of it, so y equals, let's say we had 3x squared, that 3 is the a value. If that a is positive and it's greater than 1, it's going to cause our parabola to be called vertically stretched by a factor of 3, meaning all the y values are being multiplied by 3. If I was to put a negative in front of there, then it opens down, or it's reflected over the x-axis. You can say opens down. That's perfectly fine. If that value is a fraction, it's going to vertically stretch it by a factor of 1/2, or you can say vertically compress, because now what it's doing is it's pushing all those y values closer together. So it's taking it longer to get to where it needs to go. If I put so now let's say I do this. Now I'm going to put a number inside the parentheses. Notice I put a -1 there, and what it actually does is it moves the parabola to the right one, where it's a positive one. So it's moving it in the opposite direction. If I put a +1 in there, now it's moved it to the left, a -1. So inside the parentheses, you're always changing the sign. If it's a positive inside the parentheses, it's actually moving it to the left towards the negatives. If it's a negative inside the parentheses, or a minus sign, it's moving it to the right towards the positive. And then if I put a number on the outside, so now it's just moved the parabola up. I'm going to take a quick at this. So we're going to talk about each part. So it's moved it up 2, so in the positive direction. And then if I put it as a -2. So if it's outside the parentheses, it does exactly what it says to do. If it's +2, it's moving it up 2. If it's +3, it's moving it up 3. If it's a -1, it's moving it down 1. All right, so that's what A, H, and K do. So this is just what this right here is, just going over what I just showed you on the Desmos. Okay. Key thing to remember is for H is you change the sign. Okay. All right. So now I'm actually there's not a lot of space here for 1 and 2. I'm going to actually put those on another piece of paper. Just so I have more room. Okay. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Let's go back a page. Let me erase this. Let's try this again. Alright, this is not working the way it's supposed to. It's supposed to allow me to copy and paste. Anyway, it's x squared minus 27x. F of x equals x squared minus 24x plus 7. Then, by the way, the notes are available for you to print out if you want them, or you can just keep coming back here to look at them. So just like, and everything we need to do to rewrite this into graphing form, you already have. We already have all the skills. Step 1 is to move the constant. So just like completing a square, we're going to move that 7. So we're going to minus 7 on both sides. Now we're going to complete the square. For right here. X squared goes here. Take that negative 24x and divide it by 2. And that's going to give me negative 12x and negative 12x. So now I'm going to get x minus 12 and x minus 12. So completing a square is pretty much right now has been exactly what we've been doing to solve. So the value that completes my square is the negative times 12 times negative 12, and that is a positive 144. And just like completing a square, I'm going to add the 144 to the other side. All right, so now I have f of x plus 137 equals x minus 12 squared. And now move the 137 to the other side. And we'll be done. So minus 137. Now that gives me f of x equals x minus 12 squared minus 137. Now it's in graphing form, and I'm going to talk about the transformations. So there's no number out in front of the parentheses except a 1. If there's no number there, it's a 1. That means the a is 1. It's a normal parabola. It's not stretched at all, so we don't have to even talk about it. There's a minus 12 in there. Well, that means it's actually a positive 12. So that's moving 12 spaces in the positive direction, that's to the right. This is a negative 37. So that means we're moving 137 spaces down. And that makes the vertex at 12, negative 137. All right. Okay, so that's the first one. Let me see how much space we don't have much space for the next one. All right. I'm going to add another page. And our next one is negative x squared minus 8x plus 13. Okay. So now we do exactly the same thing. We're going to move the 13 to the other side. All right. So g of x equal minus 13 equals negative x squared minus 8x. Now, remember, we can't have anything in front of that x squared because it doesn't break into two equal things. And it needs to be an x inside the parentheses. So we're going to factor out an x, or excuse me, factor out a negative. What we used to do with that is we would, if you remember when we solved it, we divided by a negative. Well, we don't want the g of x to be divided by negative 1. We don't want it divided by anything. We need to leave the g of x alone, so we're just going to pull it out. And now we're going to complete the square exactly the way we did before. Okay, I'm going to make a box. X squared goes here. I'm going to split the 8x into 4x and 4x. And that gives me x plus 4, x plus 4. 4 times 4 is 16. So, but how we don't have regular 16, we actually have negative 16. Because if I were to write this all out, I would end up with a negative 16. So I need to minus 16 on the other side too. So g of x minus 29 equals negative x plus 4 squared. And then move that 29 over. All right. Now, transformations. This time we do have something in front of the parentheses. We have a negative. Well, that means my parabola is going to open down. Okay. Positive 4. Remember, we're going to change the sign. It's actually negative 4, so it's moving to the left 4 spaces. And a positive 29 is up 29 spaces. And so our vertex is at negative 4, 29. All right. Okay, last one. And then I'm going to show you how to graph these. Really, really easy to graph them. Okay, same thing. We're going to move the 1 to the other side. We have a 2 in front of the x squared, so we're going to factor that out. Now complete our square. So take that 2x divided by 2, that's going to give me 1x and 1x. So it's x plus 1, x plus 1. 1 times 1 is 1. So what I'm going to add on the other side is 1 times 2. So I'm going to add 2 to the other side. And I've got h of x plus 3 equals 2 times x plus 1 squared. Move the 3 over, and I get h of x equals 2x squared, 2x plus 1 squared minus 3. Okay, so my vertex, to graph it. So it's a positive 1 inside the parentheses, which that makes it actually a negative 1. It's opposite, and a minus 3. And my a is equal to 2. So I'm going to change colors here so it's easier to see on the graph. So I'm going to go and plot negative 1, 3. All right. Now this is where the 2 comes in. The 2 tells me it opens up and it has a vertical stretch of 2. So the way you're going to do this, if I can get my graph to work, is that means you're going to go up 2 to the right 1. It's always a over, to graph a, it's always a over 1. It doesn't matter whether it's a fraction, a whole number, or whatever. Since this is 2, that means I'm going to count up 2 over to the right 1 and up 2 over to the left 1, because remember, a parabola is symmetrical. If this had been a 1/2, you would go up a half 1. So I'm just going to show you. Let's pretend that this was a 1/2. I would go up a half a space over 1 and over 1. It's not going to be perfect, but this is a sketch. So up 2 over 1, up 2 to the other side 1. And now sketch it. So when I go to grade your papers, I'm going to look for that vertex, and I'm going to look for those 2 points to make sure they're in the right space. All right, if you have any questions with your assignment, please jump online on Friday, and I'll answer your questions.